Time to elevate. You're running on empty with Matt and Tony.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Running on Empty. I'm Matt.
And I'm Tony.
And we're running on empty. And it's been a little while since we've done a show, but there's a good reason for that. And that's what we're going to be talking about today.
And what is that reason, Matt?
My wife and I got COVID.
Amazing.
And not in a, I have some friends that have been asymptomatic, and that was not us, man. We were in bed miserable for about 2 weeks. And I don't wish this upon anyone. If you're asymptomatic, you're incredibly lucky. There were a few days we thought we were going to die. I'm not kidding. And I'm glad we're here and back. And I really wanted to talk about this on this episode.
Yeah. And let's talk about it. I mean, I know over the last year, there's been this attempt to kind of minimize what this is, even though we've got hundreds of thousands of people who tragically lost their lives. There's been this attempt to just minimize it. It's just the flu. I guess from what you've been going through, this is not just the flu, is it?
Oh God, I've had the flu, and the flu usually like hits you really hard and then maybe goes away in like 2 or 3 days, maybe up to a week. But these symptoms don't just hit you all at once. It's kind of like going down this rabbit hole. And when you're on like day 3 or 4 of this thing, you seriously, the worst part of it is this doom and gloom that seeps into your brain, and you can't change it. It's going to happen. I was just reading an article about the neurological effects of this stuff, and I'm really happy that I think most of them are gone. But when you're in the middle of it, it is just a really bad place to be, on top of all the other crap that's happening.
Now, you lost the sense of taste and smell, right?
Yep. Let me give you the order. First day, it was, and this is my birthday present. Literally, I got this on my birthday. So 54 years old, and all of a sudden I'm sitting on my deck and I'm like, oh man, these body aches, what's going on here? I had no idea. We had been super careful around everybody going places, masked it up. Even when we didn't have to wear a mask, we masked it up because we didn't want to take any chances. We haven't been vaccinated yet. So all of a sudden these body aches start. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then by that evening, my fever was 101.9. And I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. And Jody came home from work and she's like, what's up? I'm like, I'm really feeling crappy. And she's like, oh my God, you got a fever. And immediately I did this pulse ox thing because we got that a while ago. And I'm like, okay, I'm hovering like 95, 96, doing okay. And then the next day, I didn't even want to get out of bed. The body aches were so pain, like every joint felt like it was on fire and nothing was comfortable. And then the shakes started the next morning, and that was uncontrollable. And then throughout the day, the fever, I took some Motrin for the fever to try to get it down, and it did a little bit, but I still was having like about 100 fever. The exhaustion, I literally tried to get out of bed to go to the bathroom. I almost didn't make it. And this is way too much information, but the energy to walk 20 feet to the bathroom was just not there. Crazy. And so I basically slept. We have a downstairs area, and Jody and I separated for a couple of days because she started feeling the symptoms just a few days after I did. And so I'm now like 5 feet from the bathroom, and very thankful for that. But Then you didn't want to eat. I mean, sadly, I lost about 15 pounds during all this, and she lost about the same.
Wow.
But you don't want to eat. And, so because it's not like you'd feel like you're going to throw up. It's just that you have no desire to eat because you don't have any energy to do anything. Like I have to go make a sandwich or make a bowl of cereal or whatever. So I just started eating a lot of fruit, and I think that helped. Was able to keep everything down except for I think one day. And then all of a sudden I woke up one morning, it was like day 5, couldn't smell or taste anything. And we've got a little Boston Terrier who's got the worst breath on the planet.
Archie.
And so Archie, if you can't smell Archie's breath, there's a problem. And then at night, the nightmares. On CNN, Chris Cuomo said the beast comes at night, and he was not kidding. And it's not like it was like monsters or anything like that. It's you're put into these perilous situations that are not inherently life-threatening, but you can't get out. At least this was my experience.
Wow.
And then you wake up and you're trying to get out of that, get the stuff out of your head. But it's like this, they call it doom and gloom. And a lot of people that I've spoken with that have had this in this fashion, they said, yeah, everything's negative. I'm supposed to be working on this play in Cripple Creek. And I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to, back out of this. I'm working on it now because I'm better. But the doom and gloom, that took so long for me to go away. The one weird thing is I lost my saliva for a week.
What?
So eating was almost impossible. It was water and liquid diet and electrolytes and Pedialyte, or, all the different things to try to stay hydrated. I had no spit and I couldn't make spit. So like I tried to eat a sandwich, bad move, Matt. It's not the flu. Cause I've never had a flu symptom, anything like this. And it literally was like one thing after another, after another, after another. And then you're laying there and you're going, I just don't want to be here, man. I mean, that's how bad the doom and gloom got. And I don't wish this. I mean, like when you get the flu, you feel sick, you blow your nose, you got, green snot or whatever, but this wasn't even any of that. It was so tight and congested. You had major headache. Thank God for things like Motrin and things, just to at least take the edge off. But anybody that wants to believe that this is just the flu, unless you're one of like my daughter got it and got it very lightly. So I'm kind of jealous of that. I'm glad she's okay, but not a whole lot of symptoms on her. She lost her taste and smell and then the exhaustion, but not all the other stuff that we had. I mean, we're older too, obviously. But man, nothing to mess around with. I mean,
didn't you tell me that you walk to your mailbox, which is like what? How many yards away from your house is your mailbox?
Our mailbox is, and we have a fairly steep driveway. So I'm doing this to try to see how my lungs are doing. And it's 100 feet, maybe. Right. I literally 20 feet up the hill. I couldn't do it. I could not get up the hill.
Man.
And normally I can sprint up that hill, So there was every couple hours we would check temperature and we'd check pulse ox. Jody and I were checking each other, masking up even in the house so we didn't spread it. Jackie, who's Jody's sister, lives with us. She got the vaccine, the first one a month ago, and like 3 days before we got hit, she got her second one. And anybody who doubts this vaccine out there, she did not get it like we got it. She got a couple of symptoms and then she was back on her feet. So what the vaccine needed to do completely worked. And I know that we've got antibodies and stuff going on now, but I'm going to wait and I'm going to go get it because while the vaccine covers some things, the antibodies and stuff that you get from getting it naturally cover it actually a whole lot better, but not for as long. So the Moderna vaccine, which is the one we have in our area, essentially trains your RNA to, basically understand all of it. When you actually get it, you're super protected, or supposed to be, for could be like 3 or 4 months, maybe even a little bit longer. But I think with the vaccine, I think we'll be doubly covered, and I would have no issue getting a booster because of all the different varieties. I'm not sure which variety of COVID we had,
right.
But again, not a flu at all. Wow.
So what are the lessons that we can draw from this, would you say?
With regard to just going out in public and being safe, folks, this is not over yet. Okay. I know a lot of people want to get back to normal. I do, because I've been off of work for 400 plus days. And June looks to me like my company comes back and we jump back to life with events, assuming that things don't get worse. I think that they have relaxed a lot of restrictions far too soon. If you take a look at what's going on in India right now, I mean, they're people, 300,000 people a day are getting diagnosed with this, and they're losing about 3,000 people a day.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It's horrible. And I don't want to see the United States go there. So for the folks out there that are kind of on the fence with this, if the worst you have to do to protect yourself a little bit more is put on a mask, get a mask that's fun. I got a tie-dyed one and I go, oh my gosh, your mask is so cool. And I tell people, I said, I got over this thing. And I said, and I'm going to be careful. I know there's anti-maskers out there and anti-vaxxers out there. they can do what they want to do, but until we actually get a handle on a majority of people either getting it and like, kind of having the antibodies or getting vaccinated, this thing will continue. So the best way to be safe from this is to just take a few extra steps. I've got like the wipes in my car. So when I go to the gas station and everything, I do what I got to do. I get back in the car, I just wipe my hands off, wipe off the steering wheel, and I'm on my way. It's not a big inconvenience. It's not a big deal. It's not a violation of my rights. Because when I walk into that same store, I got to have clothes on, and I'm just like, here's one extra thing. I made it a fashion statement. I mean, we're in Colorado, pot's legal out here. So I got like a nice little hippie mask and I get some nice compliments on it. Had a woman stand next to me in the store the other day. I had my mask on. Her and her kids did not have her mask on. And I'm, looking at vitamins and things. And she's standing literally within a foot of me. And I looked over and I said, hey, I'm just going to recommend you stand a little bit further away. She goes, why? And I said, because I just got over COVID. And of course she backs way up. And I said, if you were that concerned, you probably would have a mask on. I said, but I'm not here to tell you to wear a mask or not wear a mask. I'm just telling you, I had this. I don't want you and your children to get it. I would feel very bad if they did. Mm-hmm. And she literally went to the next aisle. So it's in their heads, but it's not in their heads enough to actually take the precaution because kids in our area can't get vaccinated yet. It's like 16 and up. And these kids were, like 8-10 years old. But I just, I'm respectful. I'm cool. If you don't want to wear one, that's fine. I'm gonna, but don't berate me for wearing one just because I want to take an extra precaution.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think when the history of this is written, it'll probably be like Exhibit A and why, say, social media is really so awful.
I agree.
Imagine if we had social media during the polio crisis.
Oh my God.
So Jonas Salk comes up with the vaccine and, polio was striking people down in their youth and, paralyzed for life.
Yeah.
I think if it was today, you'd have so many people refusing to be vaccinated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I think somehow the idea of vaccines as being a positive good for society that eradicates disease, somehow that got into this like zany social media culture in which everything becomes a conspiracy to kind of like dumb us down. And what's so ironic to me is some of the people that are the biggest conspiracy theorists on vaccines are people who have no hesitation to have these highly processed food diets.
Right.
Where so like man. if you're worried about toxins in your system, think about that when you go to the grocery store and like read the labels of what you're putting into your system.
Yeah.
These vaccines are being vetted by some of the greatest scientists in the world. Mm-hmm. And I'm not naive. I believe that everything needs to be completely vetted, and it's it's only when the Nobel Prize winning scientists say that something deserves a green light that I believe it should. But with some people, they're willing to put the opinion of a cable television pundit ahead of some of the greatest scientists in the world.
Yeah.
And I honestly do not get that. I mean, some of the latest arguments are that since a lot of people who've died from COVID turned out to have been obese, the real problem is obesity. And if we had do something about obesity, we wouldn't have had COVID.
Well, partially true. I mean, I think obesity has a part to play in how severely we get it.
Of course.
It's not like if you didn't have obesity, you wouldn't have COVID. No, you'd still have COVID.
Yes, you would. You absolutely would. Yeah. And we have had a number of people get extremely ill. I've seen it among the student body. No obesity issues, but have been extremely ill with COVID. We just got back from spring break a few weeks ago, and as was predicted, people came back from spring break and ended up with COVID. So you're right. I mean, this is not close to being over. I just think that what frustrates me are all the attempts being made, even after almost 600,000 people are dead, to minimize this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the attempts to make it sound like it wasn't as bad as we think or as we thought.
I have a friend of mine, and we've been friends for a while. We have good discussions. We don't necessarily agree, and I would like to. I'll mention this, and then I want to table it for a future show, because I'd love to have a show where we could talk about a lot of the stuff that's out there, and literally, touch on it point by point, and then get potentially some opinions on it. He believes in something called terrain theory, and terrain theory, and this is that one. There's this. I think she's a wacko out there, but she is talking about the more you wear masks, the more you're giving yourself COVID. And he says it's very much like delivering a package. Is the package on its way in, or it's on its way out? Are we the one creating the virus and it's coming out of us? And I said, well, let me cough on you and let's try to prove that theory, because I've had it, man, and I don't want to give it to anybody, but, no vaccine. He thinks that it's born within us. Now, there is some shreds of truth in there, but again, going back to the obesity thing, what freaks me out about this virus is that, like, a friend of mine, completely asymptomatic, didn't know he had it, gave it to his wife, who got it really bad. But this virus is interesting because it seems to know how to exploit what's wrong with you. Yes. And you don't necessarily even know what's wrong with you. And diet, I swear to you, the reason I think we fared as well as we did is because we eat healthy, organic produce, fruit, vegetables, limited amounts of red meat, not really a whole lot of pork products. Mm-hmm. We try to eat as healthy as possible.
When history about this is written, the reputable history will have to conclude that the feds, especially under Trump, completely dropped the ball on this. Yeah. And most state governments dropped the ball on this. I mean, some were better than others. The Wisconsin state government has been shameful on this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they've done almost nothing. They've refused to allow the governor. The governor had emergency powers in our state codes, and they were able to go to the Supreme Court and get the Supreme Court to agree that the governor was overstepping emergency powers. Well, if COVID-19 was not an emergency, what is?
Yeah. And wasn't that a health order, right? I mean, it's not necessarily the governor, right. It's a health order.
Right.
On our town here, our council basically, passed some type of resolution that says we don't have to listen to our governor anymore. We're going to do what we want to do. You're going to do all your COVID things. We're going to be exempt from that. I don't understand.
You and I are about as anti-tyranny as you can get, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the idea that I would say give the governor power to establish a mask mandate means that I support tyranny is absurd.
It's public health. It's not a tyranny thing.
Right. I support people being able to walk into a store feeling some level of confidence. But, when history is shown, I think it will be shown that the anti-mask and anti-vax people really won. And it prolonged this much longer than it needed to.
Well, I can tell you there's one person in our town that didn't, and that's our mayor.
Who died
of COVID. They kept it a big secret, big hush hush. And then all of a sudden it's like, we don't need to wear masks. I'm like, no, our mayor just died of this disease. No, we don't need masks.
Isn't it amazing, Matt, how the media, like there was one story about your mayor dying, but then those stories like that kind of disappear. The other example was, remember Herman Cain?
Yeah.
He was the African-American guy, Godfather's Pizza, ran for president in 2012, became a big Trump guy. He very much anti-mask.
Yeah.
He shows up at a Trump rally in Oklahoma. He dies 3 weeks later from COVID, and the story died.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was really weird about that one, I don't know if you remember this, a tweet after Herman Cain had died, like 2 weeks later, a tweet came from his account with a message.
I don't remember the tweet, but I saw that.
How did that happen? I mean, no disrespect. I mean, rest in peace, Herman Cain. But stories like that, I think, should have gotten more. There was a story on public radio the other day about people that are anti-vaccine, like what would persuade them. And it turned out that some anti-vaccine people were almost persuaded by testimony from Chris Christie, talking about how he had been hospitalized.
Yeah.
All right.
That's the last source you'd expect, but I know what you're saying.
Maybe because Chris Christie, maybe, I don't know, people could identify with him as being maybe like a kind of loud, obnoxious guy, right? And if he ended up with weight issues, he's had weight problems.
Yeah.
But apparently his rhetoric helped to move some people on this issue.
Yeah.
If I had to predict, unfortunately, I would predict that we're not going to reach herd immunity on vaccine.
I don't see it anytime soon.
And I don't. And maybe what will quote unquote save us is the fact that the summer months are coming up.
Yeah.
And the spread is not, I guess the issue is going to become, are we going to get another big surge when October, November comes around?
Yeah, I hope we don't. And being in the entertainment industry, hey folks, we're still starving out there, man. We still can't do the stuff we used to do before COVID. You go down to Colorado Springs, restaurants full to capacity. Nobody's got masks on, no social distancing, and people are saying this is over. And I'm like, well, you can think that, but we ain't out of the woods yet. And again, if we continue to be irresponsible and people, I know a lot of the states are wanting, people are smart, they're going to take it upon themselves. You want to think that, but I take a look at some of the population of our town, and I'm really losing hope for some of these people.
Lori and I went up northern Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago after we'd been vaccinated, so we felt kind of confident. We go into this restaurant for breakfast, and there's a sign on the restaurant door that says, if you feel sick, don't come in. That was basically the policy. So we go in. Of course, no one has any masks on at all. It was really packed and crowded. And had we not been vaccinated, we would have walked right out. But I tell you, even being vaccinated, I felt kind of paranoid because the vaccines are only like 90% effective, 95% effective.
It's not that you're not going to get it, and it's not that and if you get it, you can still spread it, but you might not get the symptoms as bad.
I'm glad you said that, Matt, because the other thing, I think the other major lesson from this travesty, we have to do a lot better job at K through 12 of teaching people some of the basics of health.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I have found that this principle of asymptomatic transmission is almost impossible for some people to understand. Like they don't get the idea that you can feel perfectly healthy and still transmit a disease.
Right.
Right. It's almost like you get this feeling, you almost wish that like when people coughed, like there would be like these little devil figures that would come out of their mouth, right? Because people can't see this.
Yeah.
It's almost like out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
I can't see the infectious material. So therefore there's nothing there.
Well, and this is slightly kind of gross, but I'll go to kind of college. That's how STDs are transmitted. I don't feel sick, and all of a sudden, we got a problem a few days later.
Right.
Same exact thing, man. That's obviously a lower scale, but okay, too much information. But now there's a super gonorrhea that don't fix as well as the old gonorrhea. If you've not seen that, research it on Google. I'm sure you'll find a lot of information.
Oh, great. That's all we need now is a super gonorrhea.
Well, but yeah, it's the same thing. You can feel fine and you can still be a carrier. What's the HPV virus or something? Oh my goodness. Same principle there. You can have it, not know it, and transmit it to somebody else. So there is a lot of due diligence I think individuals need to do.
I feel so bad for the millennial and the Zoomer generations.
The Zoomers
that are just, my God. But then I got to think about it, right? If you had been born in 1900, in 1917, there would have been World War I.
Yeah.
And then there would have been the flu right after that.
Yeah.
And there would have been an economic depression.
Yeah.
And then to top it off, there would have been World War II. So basically, the first 45 years of your life, if you'd been born in the year 1900, would have been almost nonstop misery.
Yeah.
And like when I tell that to the Zoomers, it doesn't make them feel better, but I'm just trying to get them to put this in perspective, right? Sure. That you're not the first generation that's had to deal with I mean, you and I mostly had to deal with like real shit governments at every level, right? You know, you and I, thankfully, Vietnam had just ended, so we didn't get drafted for that. You know, we had economic chaos and travesty, but you know, in the 80s and 90s,
for the draft though, I still had to. You know?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, which really pissed me off in 1980 when I had to register for that. But I think in the 80s and 90s, we, you know, justifiably had some optimism that things might get better.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think since 2001, it's been really difficult to be optimistic. I mean, the so-called war on terror, which has essentially bankrupted the country. And we're still I mean, Biden now is talking about getting out of Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
20 years too late. Right. I mean, you know, that's a whole other show. We can do a whole other show on that, right?
Right.
But that's the other thing, though. I mean, when the history of this period is written, to what extent did the policies of the last 20 years, which put so much money on so-called anti-terrorism, what did that take away from public health?
Right.
Right. We're still, to this very day, we're told we can't have Medicare for all while we're spending, what is it, almost $800 billion a year on our defense budget. Right. When we're technically not at war.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are topics for another day.
Yeah. Well, I think this was a great episode to come back to. I'm glad I was able to come back to this. I'm telling you, for a while it was touch and go.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I guess just, you know, one more little thing out there, folks. If you think you have this, get tested. Testing is not I mean, it's inconvenient, but it will help prevent other people from getting sick. If you are sick, stay home for 14 days. It sucks, but it beats the alternative. I would feel incredibly guilty if I got anybody sick. So I actually stayed home for an extra 2 weeks because I just didn't want to spread this thing, because I know how bad my wife and I felt. Not the flu. If you're asymptomatic or you have light symptoms, you're incredibly lucky. But just please be careful out there. I guess that's all I can say is please be careful.
And get the vaccine.
Get the vaccine.
You know, do your research. It's not a conspiracy to dumb you down.
You're not going to get nanorobots in your bloodstream and crap like that. It's not going to reprogram your brain. It's not going to like turn off chips and stuff. Our Jody's sister is living proof that it works. We literally saw it firsthand. So I know there's some people that won't, and they'll never will, and that's fine. We can still be friends. But you know, let's all as individuals be responsible, do the right thing, and hopefully everybody survives this, and not, you know, nobody else has to die from this thing, because you know, we've lost some really good friends from this, four in 1 week, in fact. And I'm just like, I don't, you know. So anyway, glad to be back.
Yes, welcome back, Matt. And I tell you, I really look forward to doing more shows.
Looking forward to more of these, man. So really, I can honestly say with a renewed sense of like, my outlook on life is completely rebooted. Stay elevated, everyone.
Yeah, stay elevated.
You're running on empty with Matt and Tony.